Alright class, welcome to Math 1030's video on Unit 4D, Loans, Credit Cards, and Mortgages. So we're going to begin with loans. First we're going to talk about some loan basics, and so we have that here. Now part A we have a loan basic of principal. Okay, what does principal mean with regard to loans? Well, it means the amount of money that is owed at any time. Okay. And usually we refer to the principal as like the starting amount of money, okay, that we have in our loan. B, we're going to have, what does loan term mean? Loan term is the amount of time you have to pay back the loan in full. Okay. Loan term. All right, now part C, I have this table that shows how loans work. Okay, and I'm not going to copy that whole table down, but refer to the table. It's 4.7 in book. Essentially what the table is saying is that when you have a loan amount to pay back, you are every month it's going to charge interest, and you have to pay or a portion, add on a portion of a percent of the money, and it'll add it on. And so every time you pay into the loan, you pay off a little bit of the loan plus the interest that you have. Okay, so that's how loans work. So you have this money that you're paying back every month to a large sum that you've borrowed, and every month the large sum accrues interest. And so when you make a payment, sometimes you're making, so at the beginning of the loan, you're paying mostly on the interest that's accrued and some on the principal. But as the loan goes further and further to be toward completion, then you end up paying mostly on principal and a little bit on interest. So we're going to go ahead and dive into that a little bit more now on section number 2 with installment loans. Okay, installment loans is one sum that you pay every month. Okay, and they usually divide that again between paying some of the payment towards the principal or the original amount that you borrowed, and then some on the interest. Okay. And so we want to calculate and that's essentially is what an installment loan is. It's a loan that you can pay off with equal regular payments. Okay, installment loan. Okay, so we're going to have a formula that we will use to calculate the monthly payment. If you're given if you're borrowing like a large lump sum, you have a certain number of money that you have to pay back, and this is the formula that everybody uses for calculating your monthly payment. Okay, so we have our payment amount, PMT. We set that equal to the principal times the APR, the rate of interest rate, annual percentage interest rate, divided by the number of payments per year. All that, do a straight line, all that over 1 minus 1 plus the APR over n again, to the minus the negative n times y, the number of payments times the year, that negative power there. Okay, and so the derivation of this formula you can look at in your book. We won't go over it here, but we're just going to use it. Now, what are the variables in this formula? PMT is the regular payment amount. The next one is P, which is the principal. Okay, principal, starting loan payment. APR is the annual percentage rate again. N is going to be the number of pay periods per year. Usually it's months. And Y is the loan term in years. Okay, and so here's our formula. Okay, continuing on, we're going to do an installment loan example here. And it's 2C on the next page of our handout. Suppose you have $10,000 in student loans to pay off after college. The APR is 8% and the loan term is 15 years. What will your monthly payments be? Okay, so we're going to write down the important, so we're going to write down our formula, fill it in here. Okay, now the PMT, the payment per month, is going to be $10,000, so we put our principal up here. Multiply it by the APR, which is 0.08 divided by 12. APR over N, so number of payments per year is 12 because I'm just doing one payment a month. The rate is 8%. Divide that by 1 subtract 1 plus, we're going to do the APR over the months again, number of payments, to the negative. Now the N is going to be a number of months again, 12, and Y is the number of years on this loan, and we're going to do this for 15 years. Okay. All right, assuming that our rates don't change, and assuming that we don't pay extra or anything like that into our loan payment. All right, so this is a pretty big formula to simplify, and so what I start out with is I start with simplifying the APR here, because it'll accomplish both things here. And that this is, I type this number into my calculator. I do 0.08 divided by 12. Okay. And when I do that in my calculator, I get, let me go ahead and write down the principal again. Oops. .00667, and it's actually a number that goes on forever. 0.0066666666. So I'm going to write down for my handwork. I'm going to write down only the first few digits. Okay, and so I'm going to divide that by 1 minus 1 plus 0.06667. Is going to be 1.00667, and I go ahead and multiply the 12 times the 15. So I add this here and I multiply this here, and 12 times 15 is 180. Okay, and I close that off. All right, the next step I usually do is I'm going to do this one right here, the 10,000 times 0.06667. Okay, and when I do that, I get 66.67. I'm going to go ahead and carry my dollars throughout just to make sure remind me of my units. And along with that, I'm going to do this calculation right here. This is the next one. 1.00667 to the minus 180 power. So I type that into my calculator, do my X to the Y key, or my caret, and then do 180 negative sign. Okay, so when you do that, I calculated that to be 0.302, and it goes on forever, of course, but we're only going to write down a little bit of it. And then the last calculation is this one in my calculator right here. So we got to do this dividing right here, that's subtracting. Now in my calculator, you can do this however you want, but in my calculator I have this number still, 0.302, goes on forever. I go ahead and I subtract 1 from that, and that will give me a negative number. But then I just press the opposite, plus or minus key, and then it will give me the difference there. And then I divide this, whatever number is there, by 6.667, and then I do the inverse key. Okay. So anyway, you can still use the little digits and type this all in. What we have here when we do all of that is we get 95.57 dollars per month. Part 2 of this is, so there's part 1. Roman numeral 2 is, what is the total amount of money you will pay? So you're taking your $95.57, and you pay that every month. But we're going to pay that for 12 months, a year, times 15 years. Okay, so that means times 12 months times 15 years. And so when we do that, we're going to find out the total amount of money that we paid, and when I calculate that, in my calculator I get $17,201.74. What is the amount of interest you will pay? So the amount of interest is going to be the $10,000 here. Subtract off the 17,000, sorry, minus the 10,000. That'll be the total interest, because it's the difference between what I'm actually paying for the rest of the loan and what I borrowed. Okay, so we do $17,201.74. Subtract off $10,000. And when I subtract that off, I get $7,201.74. Okay, and what we're going to do with this is we're going to calculate some percentages. Okay, what is the percent of total payment that is interest? Okay, so the percentage that is interest, I take the amount of interest here and divide it by the total payment that I will do. Okay, and when I do that, I'll get a decimal. So I type that in my calculator and I get 0.419, which means that I am paying 41.9% of my payment to interest. Okay, so it's a lot of interest. Okay. But $10,000 is a lot of money, and most people don't save that, so they need it right away. So yeah, there's a price to pay when you borrow a lot of money. Roman numeral 5 says what percentage of the total payment is principal. So we're doing percent that is principal. Remember, the principal is the original amount, the amount that was owed, $10,000, divided by percent of the total payment. So I have the total payment here, on the bottom. When I divide that, I'll also get a decimal, 0.581, which is equal to 58.1%. Now the payment, the total payment, is actually consisting of the interest and the principal together. And so if you calculate the interest as a percent, then you can just take this, the 100%, subtract off the interest percent, and get the principal percent, or vice versa. So another option is you can do 100%, subtract off the 1.9%, and get 58.1% as well. Okay, for this next video, we're going to think about choices of rate and term. Everybody has a budget that they have to work with. When you choose a loan for, like, say, school loans or car loan or house loan, you need to see what kind of rate and term you have. What kind of rate, as in like the percent that they're going to charge for interest for taking out the loan, and the term, or how long your loan will take to pay back. So in this example, we suppose we want to take out a loan for a $15,000 car. We budgeted $400 a month to pay for it, and so which deal would be the best for us? Okay, so we have our $15,000 car, and we want to be able to, we have a budget of $400, which means that we need to see what loan. We have a choice of a 3-year loan at 7% APR or a 4-year loan at 7.5% APR. Usually the less amount your term is, the lower the rate is. Okay? And so when you pay money, the same amount of money over 4 years versus 3 years, it's going to be a lower payment. So they will obviously charge you more for having that convenience. Okay? So part I is going to be our 3-year loan, and then APR was 7%. Okay, and so with our 3-year loan at 7%, we are going to calculate our payment, monthly payment. Okay, so that's the best thing to indicate which one loan we choose based off of our budget and our payment. Okay, our budget was $400 budget per month. And so our payment is going to be $15,000, and we're going to multiply it by the APR over 0.07 divided by 12. Okay, and then we're going to do 1 minus 1 plus 0.07 over 12 to the negative 12 times 30. So it's the n times the y power. And so we calculate first the $15,000. Okay, and again, we're going to calculate the APR first right here as a decimal, APR over n as decimal. And so when I type that into my calculator, I get 0.00583. And I think the 3's repeat forever. Okay, so we're going to go over 1, subtract 1.00583, 3 repeating, to the negative 360. No, we're going to do a car loan for 3 years. So let's erase that and put 3 years right there. Okay, so it's only 36. 3 here, 36 here. Okay, so we have our car loan. Next, we're going to calculate this right here, that product, and that product right there, 15,000 times 0.5833 gives me 87.5. Keep our money units throughout. 1 subtracted. Next, I'm going to calculate this right here. Type that into my calculator, and I get 0.811. Okay, so I'm going to type that into my calculator and get 0.07 divided by 12. That, add 1. Goes that, and then I'm going to do x to the y power, or your caret key, 36, and then the plus or minus key. Okay, so I get 0.811, and it goes on forever like 0.789, and so on. So that we're simplifying this expression here. And the next thing I'll do is I'm going to do some more calculations, and I'm going to explain a little bit more than what I did in my first video. So in my calculator I have 0.811, and it goes on forever. I'm going to subtract 1 from that. Now notice that right here I want 1 minus 1 subtract 0.811, but if I do 0.811 subtract it, reverse it, I'll get a negative number. Okay, that way I can just keep the 0.811 forever in my calculator. Now the negative number, let's back this up. Let's go with a more horizontal approach. Okay, so we have 0.811 goes on forever. Subtract 1. That gives me negative 0.1889 going on forever. And so what I do is to make it this way, I have to just use the plus or minus key and get it to be positive 0.1889. Okay, so I click on my plus or minus key. All right, so this long thing is in my calculator now, and I need to take that number and put 87.5 divided by it. Okay, so instead of doing that, I'm going to do 0.1889, and I'm going to divide it by 87.5. Now this is the opposite division way, but if I divide it by 87.5, I get something that is 0.002 going on forever. Okay, and so since it was the opposite division way, I'm going to just reverse that and say 0.002 goes on forever. I'm pressing the 1 over x key, and that will give me the right direction for the division. So 1 over x key gives me 463.16. Okay, so my answer for monthly payment for the car loan at this APR is $463.16. Okay. So if you didn't understand any of the calculation stuff, go ahead and just calculate your own way using the truncated decimals or the rounded decimals. Okay. Now, in part 2, we're going to compare this loan that we did before of 3 years and 7% with a 4-year loan. Okay, 4 years at 7.5%. Okay, so they're going to give me a bigger percent interest for having me pay them longer. Okay, so they have to be without money for longer. So the PMT, the payment, is equal to $15,000 times 0.075, which is the APR as a decimal, over 12, divided by 1 subtract 1 plus 0.075 over 12 to the negative 12 times 4 now, because our number of years that we're paying on this is going to be 4 years instead of just 3. Okay, so I'm going to again calculate these right here. And what I get is 15,000 times, and 0.075 over 12 is going to be 0.0066, and goes on forever, so I'll put 7 there, divided by 1 minus 1.00667 to the minus 48 power. Okay. Now calculating this, I'm going to do this top one. Okay, this top one is going to give me, on my calculator, 93.75. And on the bottom, I'm going to do 1 subtract, and now I'm going to calculate this one right here. And that number to the minus 48 power is 0.742, about. It goes on forever, of course. Now when I type this in my calculator, I can do the way I did it before, or I can just type in these shorter numbers, and I get a monthly payment of $362.68. Okay. Now, if I have a budget of $400, then I have, I'm comparing my 463, which is too much money, to 362.68, which is okay. So I'm going to do this option number 2. Okay, so the next topic we'll talk about is credit cards. Okay. What are some advantages of having a credit card? Well, credit cards. You can have, there's no loan term. I'm just going to say these advantages. There's no loan term. You can reserve hotels and car rentals with them. You can have a minimum payment. They're convenient. Okay. And they're safer than cash, and they have little assurances with them. What are some disadvantages? Well, some disadvantages include annual fees. Minimum payments cover little of the principal, and they can take a long time to pay off. Mostly because the biggest disadvantage, they have high interest rates. Okay, so if you own a credit card, you have to be very careful to use it and pay it at the end of every month. That way you won't get charged any interest. Well, okay, so what do people do with credit cards? Let's say they have some financial misfortune, or who knows what, they could not restrain themselves to stay on the budget. They have a credit card balance of $10,000. So APR on credit cards are very high. They're like 20%, 18%, those types of percents compared to other loans. So there's a credit card balance of $10,000 for some reason, by choice or not by choice. And you want to pay off the balance in 2 years. Okay, so how much are you going to have to pay a month to do that? Now remember, if you pay it in 2 years, you can pay $5,000 one year and $5,000 the other. But because there is interest accruing and you have to pay that as well. So we use our payment formula to calculate how much we'd have to pay each month to pay this off. Okay, so payment formula. Now the credit card has $10,000 as the principal. That's what you're starting out with. The interest rate is 21%, so it's 0.21 divided by 12, because we're going to make monthly payments. So this is a really high number right here. And I'm going to multiply or divide it by 1 minus 1 plus, again, the interest rate over the number of payments per year to the number of payments per year, and how many years. We're going to do this for just 2 years. Okay. All right, so first I'm going to calculate this and this. 0.21 divided by 12 gives me 0.0175. So we're going to do 10,000 times 0.0175. I think that's an exact number. 1 minus 1 plus, and 1 plus 0.0175. I'm just going to go ahead and write my 1.0175 to the negative 12 times 2 is 24. Okay, so that's not too bad. Okay, and then I'm going to do this now, right here at the top. The numerator, when I multiply those together, I get 175. Keep my units. 1 minus, now this part right here is my next calculation, an exponent. And when I do that number to the negative 24, I get 0.659. Okay, which is approximately equal to, after all calculations, $513.86 per month. Okay, so that's a hefty monthly payment for just for $10,000 of credit card. Okay, so a lot of people will go ahead and pay off their credit cards and take out a loan from a bank for a lower interest rate. Okay, now in part 2 of our credit card example, so this is part 1. We have, when the card is paid off, how much have you paid total? Well, we're going to take our monthly payment, $513.86, and multiply it by 12 months for 1 year, and we only have 2 years. So when we do that, we get $12,332.56. Okay, so it's and that's how much we get paid total. Now in part 3, we're going to calculate what percent of that is interest. Okay, so first let's calculate the interest by doing 12,332.56 subtract $10,000. Because that was how much we owed on our credit card. And when we do that, we get 2,332.56 and 56 cents. Okay. What we're going to calculate is the percent of the payment that is just interest. And so we're taking that 2,332.56 and we're going to divide it by 12,332.56. And we get a decimal with that one. And with that one, you get the decimal of 0.189, which is equal to 18.9%. Okay? So that's how percent of interest it is. Okay, so this next video is about mortgages. Okay, now what is a mortgage? Well, a mortgage is an installment loan that's specifically designed to help you buy a home. Designed to help buy a home. Okay, what is a down payment? Okay, down payment. The down payment is the amount of money you have to pay up front in order to get a loan. And the good thing is that it usually contributes to the loan. anything that you want. What are closing costs? Well, those are fees you must pay to begin a loan. Okay, what's a fixed rate mortgage? Okay, so it's a mortgage, fixed rate. So it's a mortgage with a guarantee that the APR will never change over the life of the loan. What is the adjustable rate mortgage? So an ARM, or an adjustable rate mortgage, that means that the rate can change. Okay, you'll be very careful with these types of mortgages. All right, so what options for a mortgage do we have? Well, let's plan. We're planning to buy a home. Okay, let's say that the home is $200,000. Okay, and we want to buy that. Usually, mortgages are offered in 15-year terms or 30-year terms. Okay? And let's see what happens with each of those. A 30-year term will have a lower. We usually have a lower APR, and a 30-year one will have a higher APR because, again, the bank has your money is out your money, that amount of money for that longer period of time. So they're going to charge you more. So in part number 1, we're going to on I here with this example, $200,000. Okay, so part number 1. Okay, so we have $200,000 home. So part number 1, we have an APR of a 30-year fixed mortgage. APR is 5%. Okay. All right, so we calculate the monthly payments and to see what kinds of loans these are. And so we have our $200,000, and we're going to multiply that by 0.05 divided by 12, all over our 1, subtract 1 plus 0.05 over 12 to the negative 12 times 30 power, because we're going to do this loan for 30 years. Okay, so that's what we have there. When I use my calculator to do I get do the 0.05 over 12, I get $200,000 times 0.004167. That goes on forever, of course. 1 subtract 1.004167 to the negative 360. Okay, now simplifying my numerator, I get 833.33 divided by 1, subtract, now doing all of this in my calculator, of course, the 1.004 to the negative 360 is about 1.2238. Whoa. Sorry about that. Okay, and so that's going to be approximately equal to $1,073.64 per month. Okay, so that's a 30-year fixed mortgage. Because they have the span over 30 years, it has a lower monthly payment. Okay, so number 2 is going to be the 15-year fixed mortgage. And the APR for that one is going to be smaller, less at 4%. So even though in the 1% difference in APR, but it's also going to be for less time, so you have a lot less interest that you're paying. Okay, and so that's number 2. And so what we're going to do is we're going to do the payment formula again. We have a $200,000 home. We're going to multiply that by 0.04 over 12 because the rate's down. and divide by 1, subtract 1 plus 0.04 over 12 to the negative 12 times 15 power, because it's a 15-year loan. Okay? And so when we do the calculations on the calculator, we get $200,000 times 0.0033. Go that through, those threes go on forever. 1 subtract 1 plus point. Oh, sorry, the 1 plus 0.033. We're going to go ahead and put as a decimal. It'll be easier that way. Okay, to the minus 12 and 15 times 15 is 180. Okay, so that's the problem there. And when we simplify our numerator, we get $666.67, or not dollars, but like that, 666.67. Goes on forever, of course. And when we simplify our exponent here, we have 1 subtract 0.549. And that's going to equal $1,479.38 when we do that calculation. All right, so when we have these 15-year versus 30-year, okay, that's Roman numeral 2. We have some pros and cons. So the pro for the 30-year, lower monthly payment. Okay. The con for the 30-year is that you have payments for 30 years, okay? That's like a long time. Okay. When we have there's pros to the 15-year as well, 15-year, and that also has to do with the payments. You have payments, the pro for the 15 years that you have payments for just 15 years. Okay. And then the con for the 15-year loan is that the monthly payments are higher. In our calculations, we have $1,000 versus $1,400. Okay. Okay, so the monthly payments are higher. Okay, so those are the pros and cons. Now, in part G, for this section on mortgages, we have closing cost points. Now, closing cost point is 1% of the payment, 1% of the loan. Remember, closing costs were fees. And houses, when you buy and sell houses and get loans for them, there's a lot of closing costs. They're fees to actually have the loan. Okay, so a lot of times they just calculate them as percents, but sometimes they calculate them as points. Okay, so here's a next example of considering the cost of the points of a mortgage versus with these points. Okay, so our situation here is that we have a $120,000 mortgage. Okay, there's two options. Okay, so choice 1, getting the mortgage, you have 30-year fixed rate. Okay, so that's, so in part 2, choice 1. Okay, you have a 30-year rate, 30-year loan. You have 4.5% APR. You have a closing cost of $1,200 plus 1 point. Okay, so let's calculate our payment. The payment is equal to $120,000 times times 0.045 over 12 divided by 1 subtract 1 plus 0.045 over 12. And we're going to do to the negative n, which is 12, times 30 years, because it's a 30-year loan. Okay, And so doing this on the calculations, you can refer to the handout. But when we do that, we get $608. Oops. Back that up here. $608.02. Okay. The closing cost is the key for this section. Is the $1,200, and we're going to add on 1% of our loan amount. So 1% of $120,000. Okay. And so calculating the 1% of $120,000, we get 0.01 times $120,000, which gives us $1,200. Oh, it's not that many dollars. Erase that. Okay, so we have $1,200 plus $1,200, so the closing cost for here is $2,400. Okay, so choice 2 gives us a closing cost amount of let's see, $1,200 plus 3 points. Okay, so we have a lower rate here. Oh, yeah, so our choice 2 is going to be 30-year loan time at a different rate, so it's a little bit lower because we're going to do more closing costs, 4.25% APR, and we have closing costs of $1,200 plus 3 points. Okay, so the closing costs are going to be a bit higher. Now, when we do our payment, we get our $120,000 times 0.0425 divided by 12, all over 1, subtract 1 plus 0.0425 over 12 to the minus 12 times 30 power. Okay, and when we do that, we get a loan payment of $590.33. Okay, so you can verify that with the calculator. Now the closing costs, were equal to $1,200 plus 3 points. We know that the point is 1% of the loan amount, and in the previous example we calculated that to be $1,200 as well. Okay, we multiply that by 3, we're going to get $1,200 plus $3,600, and that's equal to $4,800. All right, so what is going to be the best option? Okay, I would take option number 2 because my monthly payment is going to be $590 for 30 years, which is less than the $608 for 30 years. So, but it could be someone else's preference where they might not have as much money for closing costs and they can afford the difference of about $20 a month. Okay, so that's all debatable. Up to you. Anyway, that's what we have for our lesson today, and hopefully you guys will enjoy the homework. Learned a lot. Read the whole section, please, and it's a great section.